what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be bookish content. For today's video, we are going to discuss all 11 books I read in the month of February, which is a lot. I have been reading so much lately. Like, I read a lot of books in December. In January, I was on a good streak. And here in February, I have 11 books. I'm probably going to reach 100 books by the end of the year, which is insane to me. I've never done that. It's low-key a goal, but also I'm going to keep my reading goal to 70 just in case. But now I'm rambling. I have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into the video. So the first book I finished in February that I actually started in January is Redemption by J.M. Darhower. This is the sequel to Sempre, which I read last year. This has been sitting on my Kindle since February of last year, and I thought, why not get to it? This Kindle, this ebook, whatever you call it, was expensive. It was like 10 bucks, and I'm like, that is too expensive to be sitting on my Kindle. Let's get to it. I didn't really have high hopes for this because the first book I gave only 3 out of 5 stars. This one I gave 4 out of 5. So first of all, what is this duology about? Well, there's a lot to discuss, actually. This is a mafia love story, okay? So it's like a dark romance of sorts. It's gonna have some fucked up shit in it, but you should kind of know what you're getting into with the mafia shit. In the first book, there's a girl named Haven who is sold into mafia slavery. She is sold off to the DeMarco family, and one of the sons, there's 2 sons, Carmine and Dominic. Carmine falls in love with Haven. That's all I can really say. There is a lot to these books. Each book is like 500 pages, so this duology is a total of 1,000 pages. And I don't know what it is because, you know, I actually have the same critiques about this book that I have about Sempre. Like, my main critiques about Sempre is that it was corny and it was way too long. There's no reason for that book to be 500 pages. And I have the same critiques for this book. Corny, no reason for it to be 500 pages. But for some reason, I kind of loved this book to the point I actually cried at the end. I don't know if it was the book itself or the nostalgia that made me love this book so much. What I mean by that is that this book is essentially about Italians living in Chicago. I'm from an Italian-American family. I grew up in the city of Chicago. If you're new to this channel, I have recently moved to Philadelphia. So when reading this, I was reminded of home. Like, the family, granted my family's not in the mafia, let me make that clear, but the family dynamic, like, outside of that was very reminiscent of my own family. I feel like this author, I don't know if she's Italian-American, Darhower's not an Italian last name, but I feel like she got the dynamic of a typical Italian-American family from Chicago down pat, and it was just cool because she would like say Chicago things that I would recognize, and I found myself getting really homesick reading this. As corny as I found this book to be, I found it had more cuter moments than the first book did. Not only did it have more cuter moments, but I just liked the moment themselves a lot better. Even if some things did kind of make me roll my eyes. In the first book, in the acknowledgement, she does thank Stephenie Meyer, the author of Twilight. This book is very much giving New Moon. Moments are still cuter, you know, and they were still cuter than Twilight. And it had a very cute ending. I feel like everything came together. Everything that had to happen happened, and it all came together nicely, and there's just a nice sense of contentment. But funny enough, just like with the Twilight series, I like a side couple better than the main couple. The main couple is Haven and Carmine, which, side note, is hilarious to me. The fact that there's a Carmine in this book and he has a brother Dominic who goes by Dom is hilarious to me because I actually forgot the character names because, again, it's been since like January, February 2023 since I read the first book. I adopted my dog in October of 2023. I go by Dom. My full name is Dominique. I go by Dom. My dog's name is Carmine because he's named after an inside joke I have with my family. So when I read this and all the memories came back, I was like, holy shit, that's kind of weird. But that's a side note. That's a little tangent. The main couple in this is Haven and Carmine. But my favorite couple is actually is Carmine's uncle Corrado with his aunt Celia. I don't know why I like Celia and Corrado so much better than our main couple. Maybe it's just the fact that they are adults. Haven and Carmine, they're about 18 years old, and you know, 18, 26, that's actually like a huge difference in mentality and shit. So some of the things they did, I was like, ooh, okay, I don't miss those days. So it could be the fact that Celia and Corrado are adults, but there's something about them that was so cute. Like, Corrado was just so tender with her, and I need a Corrado in my life, minus the mafia aspect because he's one of the big guys in the Chicago mafia, but minus all that, he like worships the ground Celia walks on, and like vice versa. Like, she worships the ground he walks on, he worships the ground she walks on. and they're so cute together, and I liked their little moments together better than I liked Haven and Carmine's. And this is kind of the bare minimum, especially because it's a mafia book, but honestly one of my favorite aspects of this book, and this goes to especially towards Corrado, but this also goes towards Carmine, the male leads don't cheat. Like, that sounds like the bare minimum, but I'm just so tired of reading books with these topics, and like, even if they're not mafia books, there's always like cheating involved, and it's just nice to see male leads genuinely love their wives, girlfriends, fiance. They genuinely love their partner. But that basically sums it up. This did make me feel very good, and I kind of want the love they have. Like, it was cute outside the mafia aspects. It was cute. I really need the love Celia and Corrado got going on. They actually have their own book, and I would love to get my hands on that one day. And you know, this made me do a deep dive on the history of the Chicago Italian Mafia, so I learned quite a lot. There was a lot I knew growing up in the city, and of course, you know, the famous Al Capone. Not only did he run the Chicago Mafia, but he went to jail here in Philadelphia, and I've seen his jail cell. But more to it, not only did I learn more about the Chicago Mafia, I learned about Taylor Street, which was like a huge Italian-American area of Chicago. I don't know if it really still is. There's a lot going on with this book. Love stories, deep dives into Chicago history, nostalgia. It was a wild ride, but like also admittedly because of all that, this is one of the best books I read so far this year. 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a comic book, and that is Avatar: The Last Airbender in Balance by Faith Erin Hicks with art by Peter Wortman. This is a continuation of the Avatar comics, which I have been reading since late December of last year. In this specific comic, we follow Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph as they visit one of the cities that's like part Fire Nation, part Earth Kingdom, one of the combined cities. And there is a ruckus. They're finding out that the Benders are losing their job as more and more technology is coming out, so now jobs are going to the non-Benders. And Benders are not happy about that, so they are holding secret meetings, and Aang, being the Avatar, has to find a solution and save the day. If you haven't read the comics, but you have watched Legend of Korra, you will notice this is basically season 1, but flipped. This was just okay to me. This comic kind of just exists. It was a letdown. I was really excited for it because a lot of people in the Avatar fandom like the comics by this author better, it seems, than the previous author. There's a lot of beef with the comics. I tend to like them more than the fandom does. But people were praising this, and I don't know what it was about it that I found just okay, but I couldn't get myself to love it even more. First of all, the art style did take some getting used to. I thought the previous art style fit the look of the TV show more. This one I was 50 pages in and I was still kind of thrown off, so it does take some getting used to. I like that the villain in this was an evil mom. If you get these editions, there's actually notes from the author and the artist on the side, like giving you tidbits on how the story came to be. And Faith Erin Hicks did say she wanted to do an evil mom villain, considering the show had an evil dad villain. I like the concept of that, and I think she did okay with what she was setting out to do. This is not explicitly mentioned, but like reading between the lines, this is definitely the story of the early days of Republic City, which again, if you watch Legend of Korra, that's where the majority of the show takes place. Those two things are cool, Republic City and the evil mom villain, but other than that, the only thing I have to say about this is that it just exists. 3 out of 5 stars. Also, I have 12 books to talk about. I totally forgot to add a book in my notes. Oh shit. But the next book I read in the spirit of Valentine's Day was The Rescue by Nicholas Sparks. And in this one, this woman gets into a terrible accident with her non-verbal-ish son. He's learning to talk, but he has a lot of issues with it. He's 4 with the verbal capacity of like a 2-year-old, basically. During this accident, a man comes to the rescue. They fall in love, but the man is kind of standoffish. He's very scared to move forward. And it's their love from there. As you can already tell with the way I'm talking about this, I wasn't too interested in it. Again, I only read this because of Valentine's Day, and plus, as much as I'm not a romance reader, I don't like writing off genres, because even in the genres I don't like, there are still hidden gems. Like, for example, I'm not a sci-fi person, but I love Star Wars. There have been romance books that I liked in the past. I actually loved A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks, which I read years ago, so why not read more? This is just unfortunately not a hidden gem. I thought, by the end of the book, I thought it was just okay. Some scenes in this were so corny, which feels weird to critique because it is a romance novel. With romance comes corniness, but like I was just rolling my eyes hearing some of this because I was listening to it on audiobook. Rolling my eyes in the midst of working, and that's basically my only critique of it. My attention was waning, and like I guess I really shouldn't critique this book hardcore because it is a victim of just not being my genre. I'm sure it's great for its genre, but as an experience, it was not a good time. Or no, I shouldn't say that. Like because I don't dislike this book. It wasn't a great time. And I should admit to you all, I should be honest, that I did cry at one point, but I didn't cry over the romance. I cried over the tragic backstory, because y'all know I am a sucker for a tragic backstory, especially if it's a man's. And that's basically it. There are some things, like when it comes to like mental health, the discussions of mental health, be weary, because this book was published in like the early 2000s, like 2002, 2003. So it's going to use the language of that time period, or some of the research is wrong, but it's, you know, it's wrong today, but was probably correct for its time. So, you know, be weary of that. And my last question is, whatever happened to this guy? Whatever happened to Nicholas Sparks? He used to be fucking everywhere. And I remember when I was in middle school, a lot of his books were being adapted into movies. So what happened? Because you never hear based on the story by Nicholas Sparks anymore. The next book I read is the one I forgot to add to this list, so this review is going to be shit. It's a comic book, and that is Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Lost Adventures, and Team Avatar Tales, which is by a multitude of authors. It's a bind-up of short stories, all by different authors, all by different artists, so you're going to go through a multitude of different art styles. Some are much better than others. There's some in here that are so fucking ugly. I'm shocked they were published, which sounds terrible. I shouldn't, like that's not a proper critique in the slightest, but oh my god, did they hurt my eyes. And this book ended up just being cute. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It's definitely my least favorite of the comics, just because when I go into these, I want more of a cohesive story rather than just a bunch of things that can not only be part of filler episodes, but they're like the filler of the filler episodes. Because these are considered canon. And as with all short story collections, some I liked better than others. On a serious note, I think my favorite comic is the one that discussed what happened with the air nomads who survived the genocide, because some of them did survive the attacks of the temples, and they discuss how Sozin found them and killed them off to make Aang truly the last airbender. But then another one of my favorites is when Zuko and Azula, my favorite sibling duo, is when they're at some carnival in Ember Island and they're playing some game and both overreact as you do. And it's so goofy. It's one of the goofiest stories in here, but it's one of my favorites just because it's canon. Like, just knowing that Goofy comic is canon is fucking hilarious to me, and it makes it even funnier. But yeah, that's really all I gotta say about this collection. 3 out of 5 stars. Next we have Chainsaw Man Volume 9 by Tatsuki Fujimoto. This story takes place in a world where there are devils, and these devils feed off on your fear. So the more fear there is for a certain thing, the bigger this devil is. For example, you know, not a lot of people are afraid of apples, so the apple devil is probably this big, whereas a lot of people are afraid of guns, so the gun devil is like literally the main antagonist of this manga series. Then one day on his deathbed, our main character Denji, he is given the heart of the chainsaw devil, and he essentially becomes Chainsaw Man in a sense. I don't really know how to describe it. He's not a devil, but he's not a fiend either. He's his own thing, so Makima of the public relations, whatever it's called, takes him in, and then he helps them fight off other devils. That's a lot, but let me tell you, this story is a wild ride. I can't tell you what Volume 9 specifically is about without spoiling, so I'm not going to. But it was a fun, good volume. I gave it 3.75 out of 5 stars. My thing with this series is that I wasn't disliking it, but I wasn't liking it either. I was just truly baffled because I started with the anime. I watched the anime, which I believe in manga terms is like the first 4 or 5 volumes, and I was absolutely baffled at what I was seeing. I didn't know how I felt. At the time I was like, if this never gets a season 2, I'll be totally okay with that. But then because of the Philadelphia Discord and they were talking about it, I decided to take a chance on the manga, and I'm actually thoroughly enjoying it. Like, past Volume 5 and when the character Reze was introduced, that's when I truly started liking this series. As for this volume, what made me like it so much is that Denji achieves a goal that Makima set out for him in the beginning of the series. I just wasn't expecting it to take the turn that it did. Like, as these stories go, you know he's gonna reach his goal, but it just took me aback on how that happened. Nothing could have prepared me for that. But let me tell you, fucking Makima, she can catch these goddamn hands. I was suspicious of her since the beginning. You're supposed to be, so this is, you know, a reader having media literacy. But I was, so suspicious of her just to have my suspicions confirmed. She can suck my fucking ass. Again, 3.75 out of 5 stars. Then another Avatar comic, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Katara and the Pirate Silver by Faith Erin Hicks. This comic takes place within the OG TV series. One day, Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph, they are out flying and they lose Katara, and while Katara is trying to find her way back to them, she comes across some pirates. This was just okay. It's cute, and I liked the story. It was adorable, but this is very much like a filler episode. And I feel like this added nothing to Katara's character, especially because it takes place within the OG show. So like, I've seen her arc, I've seen what she can do, I've seen her grow and get better throughout the series. So seeing her kind of revert back to this was just whatever. It was still fun and I liked the new character, so 3 out of 5 stars. The next 2 books I'm just going to talk about at the same time. They are Chainsaw Man's volumes 10 and 11 by Tatsuki Fujimoto. I gave them 3.75 stars and 4 stars respectively. I read these in one night. I could not put these down as new information was constantly being revealed. We finally get to learn the history of Chainsaw Man and why he's so important. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say whose form this is, but there's a certain devil form. Like, that design I was absolutely obsessed with. I ended up giving volume 11 a higher rating simply because it's the end of part 1 of the manga series. This manga series is so far being told in 2 parts, but this is the end of part 1 and I thought it ended very nicely. Like, everything was solved, issues got solved, there were no loose ends, some loose ends you need because you need them for part 2, but like, the majority of it was solved in this part. I thought it was all wrapped up nicely. Well, truthfully, I shouldn't say all of it was wrapped up nicely because I feel like when it comes to characterization, something is missing. Like, it is all there, it just could, maybe it's because of the pacing, because this manga is very fast paced. The characterization's there, but I feel like it does fall victim to telling us things and not exactly showing. Like, for example, at one point, Power is very traumatized with a certain event, and they just listed out her triggers and her traumas, and like maybe there were 4, I shouldn't say 4, that's an exaggeration, but like her actually being traumatized, it lasted like maybe 2 chapters and then they moved on. So maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Like, characterization is there and I feel like I've grown to know who Denji is, who Makima, Aki, Power, Himeno, all of them. I feel like I know who they are, but they still could have been fleshed out a bit. So again, 3.75 stars and 4 stars respectfully. I am excited to get to part 2. The next book I read is the best book I read so far in 2024, and that is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. In this book, there is a woman who has 2 daughters that never meet. They are Effia and Essie. Both were born and raised in what we today know as Ghana, but Effia married a white British soldier, and Essie was sold into slavery. And from then, we see their familial lines and how these moments in their lives define their descendants. So each chapter is going to be a new character. So for example, the first chapter is Effia's point of view, then it's Essie's, then the 3rd chapter is Effia's child's point of view, the 4th chapter is Essie's child's point of view, so on and so forth. There's a total of 7 generations. We're going to see the point of view of 14 characters. The first thing about this book was learning a lot about certain cultures. So Effia is from Fantaland, I think that's how it's called. And at one point, her children marry into the Asantes. I have actually never heard of these group of people before picking up this book. So while reading it, I was Googling just so I knew like what to imagine in my head, because she would talk about the houses they lived in and the clothes they would wear, the food they would eat. So I Googled all that as I was reading. So I was learning a lot about these groups of people and just Ghana as a whole as well. And I wanted to bring that up because not only is that super important for characterization, especially Effia's family as they stay in Ghana, but the cultures are super important to the plot itself as well. I was really impressed with the multiple point of views because yes, there are 14, but everyone is just so fleshed out into their own person, which is super impressive given the size of this book and therefore the length of the individual chapters. I didn't think she would be able to do it. When I saw the amount of point of views, I was so hesitant at first, but she did a great job. And something that actually worked for me, which is another thing I'm shocked about, because typically I'm not a big fan of these, but each chapter ends on an open-ish ending, especially when it comes to Essie's family's points of view, because they're going to have an open ending, but given what was happening in slavery, their stories are never going to be completed. We're never going to find out what happened to Ness. We're never going to find out what happened to Essie, because Ness was taken away from Essie. Whereas you have Effia's family line, like yes, these chapters have open endings, but because, you know, Effia's son knows who she is, we do still get to see Effia. her grandson knows who she is, and her grandson therefore passed down the stories to her great-granddaughter. So despite being like 4 generations in, we still get to see Effia's name, whereas when it comes to Essie's familial line, unfortunately we don't, given what we know about slavery. And I actually do want to go into spoiler territory for this book in order to truly talk about what I really liked about this book. So I'm just going to put spoiler at the bottom of this video and you can go ahead and skip that. But basically that's the end of the non-spoiler part of the review, so I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. But when it comes to the spoiler stuff, the narration, the outline of the story, what's the word I want to use? Outline, narration, the way the story is told is magnificent to me. This is honestly one of the most heartbreaking books I've ever read, especially when it came to Essie's family, because slavery is such a tragic part of American history and the things this poor family had to go through. Effia got to marry rich. She married comfortably and got to raise her child herself and therefore meet her grandchild. And we see through Effia's familial line, like they get to know their ancestors and who they are, and they even have an heirloom. Whereas when it comes to Essie's descendants, in the early days, especially during slavery, they didn't know who their ancestors were. So they were taken away from their home, not only quite literally, but also just culturally too. Like these people didn't even know they were from Ghana. And Essie had the same heirloom as Effia, given they had the same mother, but unfortunately she lost that heirloom, so her family line didn't get to have one. Which to me, when we think about this like figuratively, that symbolizes the family line breaking apart. And that is tragic, but I noticed as the story went on, they did eventually get to know who their families were. It's when the title started to click too, because as slavery disappeared and families weren't being torn apart anymore, the family line became more in tune with who their ancestors were. Like the last person in Essie's line that we get to talk to, you know, knows his mother, knows who his grandfather was. And the more in tune Essie's family became with their ancestors, the closer they were to quote-unquote home. And I just thought it was so fascinating that when Essie's line, when the last person in Essie's line met the last person in Effia's line, which I knew it was going to happen given how these stories go, but when they finally meet, they quite literally go back home to Ghana. It was just a light bulb moment for me because, you know, the title's Homegoing, and then seeing Marcus meet Marjorie and going to Ghana together, not knowing that's where his family's from, and even getting the heirloom because Marjorie passes down the heirloom to him, and seeing him, you know, finally back in his ancestral home. The title makes so much more sense. But also, like, the concept behind it, I just think it's beautiful. Like, yes, you lost, like, the Essie's line, they lost each other, they lost their family, but when they get to meet again, it's in their home, it's in their ancestral land, it's in the home that Essie was stripped from. The ending just made me so happy, which I wasn't expecting given how heartbreaking the beginning of this book was. And it gives you a sense that there is hope. So again, this is the best book I read so far this year, 5 out of 5. Alright, 3 more books to talk about. We got Avatar: The Last Airbender, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy by Faith Erin Hicks. This takes place after Imbalance. We are back in the Earth Kingdom. Toph has a metal bending academy where she's teaching people how to metal bend. But it's going so well. It's very, very successful to the point that her first ever pupils are now teachers, but she is incredibly bored. And then one day while she's out wandering, she discovers something that brings joy. And you know what? Just like a Katara solo comic, this was cute, but felt more like a filler story, which is not a bad thing. I'm sure that's why some people read these. But I personally, when going into the comics, I want to learn more about the world, more about the lore. And I don't know, I'm not really getting that from these solo comics. I will say this is the funniest one so far, but that's because Toph is just like a naturally funny person. And I shouldn't say there's like no development of lore, because there is some lore introduced in this, but it's very, very basic. For example, the band in the OG show that sang Secret Tunnel. You find out in this that they are actually highly successful in the Earth Kingdom, and Suki is obsessed with them and knows all their songs by heart. Sokka still hates them. There's a certain type of bending that Toph gets to witness, and you can also see like the beginnings of the police force that she created in Legend of Korra. But yeah, this just exists, 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This book takes place in the 1700s, and our main character, Monty, is going on the grand tour of Europe with his friend Percy. His sister Felicity's tagging along because she has to go to some girly school. However, he steals something that he should have absolutely not stolen, and now they are being chased and their grand tour takes a turn. This is such an interesting book because I thought it would be right up my alley. I love a good adventurous book. It takes place in the 1700s. I have like a thing with the Revolutionary War period. Granted, this takes place, you know, not in America, but still that time period. And it would describe the fashion sometimes. And I love the fashion of that era too. And it actually, like, reading about some of the things they saw and the places they've been, it made me like reminisce on my own Europe trip. I went on a 2-month-long Europe trip when I graduated college, and I got to see the countries they went to. Like, they went to France and Spain. Did they go to one more? Whatever, I've been to France and, oh, they went to Italy. I've been to all 3 of those countries. It starts out in England. I have been to England. However, I still gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. That is because, while all the other characters were really fun and interesting, like, I really loved Felicity and Percy. And I loved the antagonists. I loved Dante and what's-her-face, Helena. I absolutely could not stand our main character, Monty. I thought Monty was absolutely insufferable. Even when he learned to be good, because that's the trope this book follows, shitty character learns to be a good person. Even when he learned to be good, I thought he was really annoying. I just couldn't take how, like, smarmy he was and had a clapback for everything, which is weird because I've read characters like that before that I enjoyed reading from. So I actually don't know what it was about this character specifically, but I almost put the book down. I never DNF books. I think I've DNF'd 2 books in the past 5 years. I almost put this down. I only didn't because because curiosity got the better of me because of the other characters. But my attention did wane. I'm sure there's certain parts of this book that were important, but I missed. Whoops. And it's just so funny to me because I usually like reading from the point of view of unlikable characters. I mean, I read fucking Gone with the Wind. Scarlett O'Hara is not a likable character, and that book's a brick. And I gave that 4 out of 5 stars, and yet I couldn't get into this one. And actually, one valid critique I have of this book is that there's one character where, like, she just kind of disappeared. When the action finished, she got on a boat and left, and I'm like, so what happened to her? And then we never really get an explanation for that. And I read the sequel. I'm going to talk about it in the March wrap-up, but I read the sequel, and she's not mentioned in that either. So I have questions about that. But other than that, yeah, I did not like this. This is the worst book I read so far this year. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book I read is Avatar: The Last Airbender, Suki Alone by Faith Erin Hicks. This comic takes place within the OG show, and it's about Suki's time in the Boiling Rock jail. This comic didn't actually feel as fillery as the other ones because I found Suki to be the least fleshed out character in the show. And this one, we get to see more of her. I get to learn more about her as a character, and I really enjoyed that. I really like learning about her home on Kyoshi Island and what the island is actually like, because we only get to see the island for the 1 episode, and so much of that episode is focused on the Kyoshi warriors, which is not a bad thing, because they are important later down the line. They are important for the plot. But, you know, I wanted to know, like, what made Kyoshi Island so different from the Earth Kingdom, because they are so isolated. It also explored what made her become a leader in the first place, and I thought that was really cute. And not just the leader of the Kyoshi warriors, but like what made her like a leader personality-wise as well. We also get to learn more about the Boiling Rock jail and what makes it so harsh, because like there's 2 episodes focused on it in the show, but I still feel like we didn't get to see a lot of what happened. There are a few things in the show that were pretty like, holy shit, that's really bad. But I feel like the comic goes deeper into it. And admittedly, I did enjoy the fan service at the end. It's good fan service, but it put a big smile on my face. I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it. And out of the 3 there's 4 solo comics, and I've read 3 of them. Out of the 3 I've read, this is the best one. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And that is it for this video. Let me know down below if you guys have read any of these books. Let me know your thoughts if you want to read them. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.